Hi, I am David Ezekiel, interim pastor of the Congregational Church of Batavia. Today, June 19th, is Juneteenth, also known as Freedom Day or Emancipation Day. It's a holiday commemorating the end of slavery, the end of human enslavement in the United States. It was on this date in 1865 that Union soldiers arrived in Galveston, Texas, to spread the word that the practice of enslavement had been abolished. Of course, the Emancipation Proclamation had gone into effect some 2.5 years earlier in January 1863. Most Confederate states ignored it until they were forced to free their slaves by advancing Union troops. Approximately 250,000 enslaved persons, 250,000 human beings living in Texas, had no idea that President Abraham Lincoln had issued a proclamation nearly 3 years earlier stating that all enslaved persons were free. The celebration of June 19th was coined Juneteenth and grew with more participation from descendants of enslaved persons as they treated the day as their Independence Day. As early as 1866, freed slaves in Texas held celebrations on this date to commemorate and celebrate the end of their enslavement. As American descendants of slavery began to migrate from southern states, particularly after the Great Depression, observance of the day spread throughout the country. In 1868, shortly after Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination, his Poor People's Campaign held a Juneteenth Solidarity Day, giving the holiday a new prominence in the civil rights movement. To commemorate this date, the Civil Rights Act of 1864 was passed by the United States Senate on Friday, June 19th, 56 years ago today. It's often viewed as the most important United States civil rights legislation since Reconstruction, and it prohibits discrimination based on race, color, religion, or national origin in employment, voting, and the use of public facilities. It was first proposed in 1963 by President Kennedy, but failed to pass. Lyndon Johnson put forward a more robust version the following year, and the act passed with a 71-29 vote. Now, fast forward to 2020, and the question arises, what significance will Juneteenth have in the age of the hashtag Black Lives Matter movement? According to the Black Lives Matter website, Black Lives Matter is an ideological and political intervention in a world where black lives are systematically and intentionally targeted for demise. It is an affirmation of black folks' humanity, our contributions to this society, and our resilience in the face of deadly oppression. And while Juneteenth embodies the same sense of liberation for African Americans as the 4th of July does for the nation, our country continues to struggle with the oppressive, inequitable, and unjust treatment of people of color. For example, Black Americans fail to receive due process of law or equal protection. Instead, according to the Sentencing Project, 1 in 3 black men and 1 in 6 Latino men is likely to spend time in prison in their lifetime, as compared to 1 in 17 white men. And according to a report on race and incarceration from the Center for Prisoner Health and Human Rights, this racial disparity also exists for women. While 1 in 111 white women will spend time in prison, for Latina women, this likelihood is increased to 1 in 45, and for black women, 1 in 18. Black Americans and other people of color are disproportionately impacted by voter suppression maneuvers. The American Civil Liberties Union reports that 70% of Georgia voters purged in 2018 were black. Across the country, 1 in 13 black Americans cannot vote due to disenfranchisement laws. 1/3 of voters who have a disability report difficulty voting. Only 40% of polling places fully accommodate people with disabilities. And across the country, counties with larger minority populations have fewer polling sites and poll workers per voter. So let's take these matters to heart and work for justice to change the situation. And let us be reminded that Juneteenth serves as a chronological turning point in American history, celebrating the triumph of the human spirit over the cruelty of slavery. Juneteenth is a time to pause and remember those African American descendants who suffered and died, and to honor those who survived as living witnesses to the inhumane institution of slavery. It is a time to venerate the shining legacy of resistance and resiliency of an abjectly oppressed people. Juneteenth is not just an African American holiday. It is a template